All right, we're on our second segment of the morning, and I think we need to address the Egyptian issue. You know, we've been supporting the Morsi tyranny since they ousted, and we assisted, of course, in ousting the last tyrant dictator that was in there. And the people there, in the past year and a half or so, since Morsi was elected, and I use the term lightly, they have been adamant that that tyranny, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, is unacceptable in their nation. And they realize that they have jumped from the frying pan into the fire, politically speaking, but militarily speaking as well. The level of oppression that comes out of the Morsi government is just as bad as it was under Mubarak. It's the same tyrant, different face, different name, same tyranny, and they're sick of it. They've given, for the record, they've been storming and rioting now for, a week and a half. Massive protests. They actually stormed the presidential buildings, and they are trying to force Mohammed Morsi from office. The seat of the powerful Muslim Brotherhood, this is their headquarters, was set ablaze. And the folks burned and looted the building. I don't advocate violence. But like all other human groups, they have a right, if they must resort to violence, because the government is persecuting them, to take whatever means are necessary to stop the betrayal and the oppression. Our founders did it. You know, our government would love you to think, and they always have this diatribe out there of non-aggression, never fight, never have hostile words. Everyone should be calm and cool and reason and rationalize. Let me tell you something. That's only because they're the ones who will lose if you determine that reason, rationalization, and peaceful dialogue don't solve the problem. You see, only tyrants would tell you that. Only a tyrant would tell you that you don't have a right to revolt when the abuse is so great that it exceeds that which the nation can accept. The other day, 22 million people signed a petition to remove Morsi from government. 22 million. What do those people have that we don't have? They actually came out the other day, or actually this morning, and they posted on this is the Rebels organization, or I'm inclined to call them freedom fighters at this point, because they're fighting against the Muslim Brotherhood, which is clearly and obviously a terrorist and tyrannical administration. I don't know what their political affiliation is or leanings are, but I do know that the Muslim Brotherhood is a theocracy. They're a theocratic political organization who believes in murder, intimidation, and coercion to achieve their political and theological goals. They don't operate on political ideology. They operate on religious theology. And they're quick to hypocritically abuse that which they profess to believe in their effort to retain power, which tells me that it's all a sham. On one hand, they say Islam is a religion of peace, and that's the right methodology for a theological government. But they're just as much guilty of murder and torture and coercion and abuse, kidnappings, beheadings, as Mubarak was. So Mubarak, which was more secular in his approach, is no different than these guys are. That's why the founders here said, don't have a state religion that is forced down everyone's throat, because then you become a theocracy. They didn't mean that government has to be completely isolated from all religion. That's a fallacy pushed on you by the progressives. Because they know that without religion, people are willing to exceed the moral boundaries that most human beings have, in large part as a basic function of their religious belief. And I don't care what that religion is. I'm not saying you can't be an atheist and be a moral person. I'm saying that most people have a religious belief that builds a framework and a guide system for them. And whether they're Christian or Catholic or Jewish or Buddhist or even Islamic, there are boundaries that for most people, their religion clearly defines for them. When you're an atheist, and I'm not trying to throw atheists under the bus here, so please don't misunderstand me, because my goal is never to, or an agnostic, by the way, my goal is never to alienate a group. I believe that atheists can play a role in the restoration of our republic as well. But when you don't have that guidebook that a religion gives you, and religious faith gives you, and belief, then what you have is a no-holds-barred, everything is okay as long as what? I mean, there's no penalty for doing the wrong thing, so why not do the wrong thing? And I'm not saying that religion should rule by fear, but you know in your heart, and we all know, that stealing is wrong. Taking something that doesn't belong to you is wrong. Injuring or hurting someone is wrong. You don't have to be a religious believer to know that. Even atheists know that. They learned that, as did you, when you were playing there at 1.5 years old with little Bobby or little Cindy, and you took your Barbie doll and you bonked Cindy over the head and she began to cry. And it suddenly dawned on you that you felt bad because you had hurt someone without good reason, not for self-defense purposes. So we learned that pretty early on. We don't need a moral compass delivered to us in a book to recognize some basic truths. However, we do need, for the more nuanced versions of life and aspects of life, to have some kind of a guidebook as to what is acceptable and what is not. I mean, the basics are pretty clear. But we have to have something that we can refer back to from time to time and say, in this situation, how should I act? In this situation, what are the boundaries of my behavior that should rule my action? Because everything isn't as black and white as bonking Cindy over the head with a Barbie doll, is it? And these people in Egypt are clearly cognizant of the fact that they voted this government in, And I have some doubts as to whether or not they actually did, but that's a whole other topic. You know, there's a lot of contention out there about whether or not this was actually a really true democratic election. But they did protest for it and to get rid of Mubarak, who they perceived to be a hated tyrant and a usurper. And what they did is they foolishly allowed in the door this group who classifies themselves and claims to be morally sound, and yet has done everything against that to dissuade or dispel the truth of their statements. Have we not noticed a parallel in our own political environment? Not necessarily regarding religion, but didn't we hear that this was going to be the most transparent administration in all of history? The most fair, the most honest? It's Mike Evans. I'll be right back.
I've swum here every summer in my adult life. Every summer, there she is.
Can you name that movie?
Is it The Sandlot?
It is The Sandlot. Who's this?
Gretchen Evans.
What are you doing this morning, Gretchen?
Driving to work.
Where do you work?
At Vac.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Gretchen.
Name that movie, 7:35 with Cooper and Company. This week is Summer Movies.
Join Cooper and Company weekday morning 6 to 8 a.m. here on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point.
The Battery Station in West Plains is your headquarters for getting and being prepared. Natural disasters, civil unrest, personal and family protection, long-term sustenance, and most importantly, peace of mind. Berkey bottles and home-sized water purification systems, survival food, MREs, freeze-dried food, survival knives, lanterns, ammunition, military sleep system, and of course, batteries of all shapes and sizes. Take charge of your own survival and security. The Battery Station, 303 Washington and West Plains, 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com.
All right, you've heard the news. There's never been a better time to buy a home, refinance, or maybe if you're over 62 or if you have a parent over 62, it's a great time to look at a reverse mortgage. We've all heard the ads. What you don't know is that there are amazing government programs to help you get it done. But where do you start and who do you call? Easy. Call the Center for Sound Consumer Advice first. Still the one and only consumer advocacy referral service in America. Since 2004, there's never been a fee, charge, or obligation of any kind for their Today in America series of free consumer protection guides. Your first step is to call 1-800-868-9960. That's 1-800-868-9960 and get these free guides while they last. You need to buy a home. You've got to refinance, right? Well, now that I've gotten your attention, there's no reason to put this call off. Get your hands on the brand new 2013 Today in America series consumer protection guides right now by calling 1-800-868-9960. Again, it's 1-800-868-9960.
You know, Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance just kicked off a brand new website the other day. I invite you to get over there. It's called OzarkSurvivalGear.com. OzarkSurvivalGear.com. Make sure that you jump on there and take a look at what they have to offer. They have a lot of bulk and long-term storage food and some alternative cooking methods. They actually have that sun oven there, which is a fairly unique product, and I'd like you to take a look at that. But also our friends over at Spring Creek Beef, who have all-natural, 100% grain-fed beef that you could cook in that sun oven. Make sure that you see them at springcreekbeef.com. Mary, my buddy over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, who is the best damn bakery in 100 miles, make sure that you see Mary because she's got great pastries and products every day. I get a loaf of bread from her probably once a week if possible, and outstanding bread. Very hard to find in the Midwest for some reason. Not quite sure why. I've lived on the left coast and the right coast and in the Midwest, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of different variants in bread. The East Coast has got some phenomenal bread. Our friends over at West Plains Pawn at 256-3000, they're on Highway 160, have a ton of firearms under glass. Make sure that you see them. And our friend Jason from the Wits End Classic Barbershop, who cuts my hair, and he's right over on the square in West Plains. You can go in there and get yourself a haircut for $10. So it's a little bit more than 2 bits these days. Unless you've got silver quarters, then it might actually be 2 bits. Well, I don't know. Silver's down today, so maybe not. Also would like you to get a hold of Greg over at Black Ops School of Combat, and you can find him at blackopsschoolofcombat.com. He does do concealed carry courses. He had one over the weekend on the 29th on Saturday, and at $75 an hour, or excuse me, $75 per person for an 8-hour course, and they can split it into 2 evening courses during the week if that helps. So make sure that you call him. He's got a special offer. If you bring 5 friends, your class is free. You know, I was having a discussion with John Hatley and Jason Elkins the other day. Those are 2 guys. John runs a kind of a site development and grading and driveway company, and he's done some work for me in the past, actually, too. And Jason, who's a plumber, owns his own plumbing shop. You know, the idea of what America is willing to accept here is so far outside of the scope of the boundaries that we were founded upon. And, you know, when you talk to everyday folks like these fellas, they're outraged. But they don't have, you know, they don't have the source to go out there and hunt for news all day. And they rely on programs like this to kind of keep them up to speed. And, you know, they're supporters of this program, and they're supporters of this show and me. And, you know, when you're looking at what is happening on a global level, I think most Americans realize that we're rapidly running out of options here, and that these types of protests may actually be required. How we could not have a petition that gets 22 million signatures in the United States of America is beyond my understanding. I just can't figure it. I can't fathom that. I don't know how many registered voters there are. I don't pay attention to that kind of crap. But I can tell you this. I guarantee that there's 22 million Americans who are absolutely disgusted with where this nation is going. At least. And honestly, if those 22 million Americans don't recognize that at some point in the very, very immediate near future, that we are going to have to put it all at risk, all of it. We're going to have to put it all on the line. Our businesses, our homes, our income, and that we're going to have to try to take some kind of drastic action to peacefully resolve this and take our nation back in a peaceful method. I get it. You know, you're thinking, well, I'm one of the 22 million, so why do I have to give up my business and shut my doors to go storm Washington? I mean, I don't have an easy answer for that. But I can say that don't look at it like you're doing it to save the other 314 million Americans. Look at it like you're doing it to save you and your family and your business in the long run. Because at the end of the day, when tyranny reigns, you don't have a business. You don't have a car. You don't have a home. Inflation will literally wipe out anything and everything that you've saved, that you've prepared for. If you're a retiree and you think your pension or your 401k is going to be safe, you're deluding yourself. You're going to be working as hard as Jason and John at 70, maybe 80. How are you going to do that? Isn't now the time? Isn't today the day? I mean, what are you waiting for? You waiting for somebody to walk up and give you permission? That just shows me how brainwashed America is. I talked over the weekend about, on the Saturday show, about taking back our nation by, or putting in place an ombudsman program to monitor government post-collapse and under a restoration or a reformation of the phoenix of liberty that rises from the ashes of this tyranny we're in. And some knucklehead actually put in a comment that said, well, who's going to watch the ombudsman? I thought, we spent an hour on it. I thought we explained it pretty clearly, but apparently he didn't get it. I mean, does America need to be led around like a bull with a nose ring? Do you need permission to tell you to go to the bathroom, to wipe your rear end? I mean, come on, people. Get up on your hind legs and take responsibility for who you are and where you live. If you don't, no one's going to. They're counting on you sitting it out. That's true. They're counting on you sitting it out, waiting for somebody to ride up on a white horse in shining armor and save your lazy rear end. They know that you are apathetic. They know that you're lazy. They know that you're comfortable and that you don't want to do anything to disturb that comfort level. They're banking on it, baby. The question is, are you going to show them the error of their ways? Or are you going to succumb to tyranny like they did from the process of moving from Mubarak to the Muslim Brotherhood? I don't know what you're waiting for. If you want, by the way, to give Jason a call to do some plumbing for you, you can get a hold of him at 293-7640. And John Hatley, who did a saw cut for me in my some concrete work and some site development stuff, you can get a hold of him at 293-8226. Both of those guys are well known around here and well respected, do a great job for their clients. And they're big supporters of this program, so make sure that you give them a shout if you're doing something along those lines. Jason is at 293-7640 for plumbing. John Hatley at 293-8229. You know, we must come to some sort of a conclusion. That's what our discussion was circled around. That if people are not going to stand up now, while they have an opportunity to do so, it won't be long before that opportunity won't be available to you to do it in a peaceful format. If you haven't written this quote down, or if you need it, you can find it on americasvoicenow.org. You can find it by clicking on the plan to take back America. Take back America, place all state and federal capitals under disobedient siege. Or 90 days that will save the world. It says, still, if you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. And there may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as a slave. So where do you stand? Are you willing to let this go so far that the action that needs to be taken has to be violent? Or are you willing to fight when victory can actually be sure and not too costly? That's where we are. You can try to nuance it a million ways from Sunday. You can try to rationalize some other argument. But the simple truth is, it's time to face the reality of where we stand. It's now or never, folks. Time's up. You can find our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find our Facebook page where we post up dozens of stories every day at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And finally, you can find this and every other show that we do on YouTube. And you can go to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. That's youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We break these programs into half-hour segments lately, and if you find one that is, valuable to you, or you might find it valuable to help educate someone around you who maybe is sitting on the fence, send them a link. Just send them a link and email.
From West Plains, Missouri, it's KBMV Birch Tree, the Ozarks' best news talk.